Hello and good evening and welcome to the Caithness Amateur Dram Antics Society. Tonight I'm going to be doing a Balvenie tasting of two of their core range. The Balvenie Doublewood 12-year-old bottled at 40% and the Balvenie 14-year-old Caribbean cask bottled at 43%. The Balvenie distillery was built in 1892 by William J. Grant. The name Balvenie means village of luck. The company is still in the hands of William Grant and Sons Limited. When the distillery was first built, Grant had to save a bit on the equipment, and the stills that were used were stills from the Lagavulin distillery. Over the years, the Balvenie whiskey became very popular, and the distillery increased the number of stills from 2 to 4. In 1971, the whole distillery was renovated, and the number of stills was increased to a total of 9 stills. But the Balvenie has never stood still in the course of its history, even if production had to be reduced during the wars. Although many distilleries had to close during prohibition, the Balvenie did not. For the distillery in Dufftown, it meant only a reduction in competition. Due to the high production, the malt cannot be fully supplied by the malting floors at the distillery, so the distillery has to buy the other malt from big malting companies. One interesting fact is that Balvenie Distillery didn't have a distillery bottling until 1973. Today, it has a big core range of standard distillery whisky with a common design. The one man who has shaped the Balvenie brand and the whisky scene for a long time is David C. Stewart, who joined the distillery in 1962 at the age of 16. He worked his way up to malt master and is still working for the Balvenie as an honorary ambassador since 2023. He passed on his title as malt master to Kelsey McKechnie, who has been part of the Balvenie team since 2014. The production output at the Balvenie is very high for a single malt distillery, with 7 million litres of alcohol per year. It's achieved with 5 wash stills and 6 spirit stills. And the scale of production at the Balvenie is also interesting. It has its own farm, its own malting floors, its own spring, a coppersmith, a barrel maker, and all the usual facilities of a distillery. The traditional Scottish barley for the malt is partly grown on the Balvenie Main, a 1,000 acre field equivalent to about 3,500 square metres. And the distillery works together with the 5th generation of the Wiseman family. The farming family grows the barley for the Balvenie whisky on the land. The Balvenie has preserved the traditional malting floors and is now one of the few distilleries where you can buy whisky that is produced as it was before the industrialisation of whisky production. Today, around 5 to 10% of the barley is malted in-house. The rest is bought in. However, the smoky proportion for the peat wheat whiskies comes entirely from the company's own production, as the smoke content can be better adapted to the needs of the distillery. The coppersmith keeps all the stills and the associated pipework in good condition. The Balvenie states that the shape of their stills is one of the most important factors in creating the character of the distillery. The cask makers are also very important for the typical flavour of the Balvenie. They check, repair, build, fill, and seal casks all day long. The wide variety of casks at Balvenie makes this department an indispensable part of the distillery. The capacity of each of the 5 wash stills is approximately 12,000 litres. They have a very round shape and are equipped with a reflux bowl. The stills are also very tall, and the line arm is falling after the neck. The spirit stills are bigger, and there are 6 of them, also with a capacity of 12,000 litres each. This allows for very slow distillation, whereby the unwanted flavours in the alcohol can be better separated. The spirit stills are more tubular, and there is another reflux ball above the intermediate piece. However, the line arm rises upwards after the bend. All of this means that the unwanted flavours and fusel oils are separated very well from the new distillate, which is one of the reasons why Balvenie is so smooth and sweet and has no sharp or intense undertones. The malting floors at the Balvenie are open and working up to the present day, and the malt at the Balvenie shows almost no phenol content from drying over peat fire. The distillery mixes the purchased malt from the large malting plants and its own malt in a ratio of 11:1. Starch is converted into sugar from the 12 tons of barley grist in a modern lauter tun in 2 mashing and 2 lauter processes. Balvenie has 15 washbacks with a volume of 52,000 litres. There are also 250 litres of liquid yeast. With a fermentation period of 65 hours, the distillery aims to create a sweet and malty character. The wash then goes on to distillation at 10% volume. Most of the warehouses at the Balvenie are kept traditionally flat and are made of old grey stone. This and the Scottish Highland climate let the whisky mature very slowly, making it very smooth. The choice of casks at the Balvenie warehouse is very diverse. There are a vast number of first and refill bourbon casks, but there are also a lot of sherry casks and quite a few more exotic casks such as rum and wine casks. Today, Dunnage Warehouse number 24 sits on the foundations of the new Balvenie Castle, which was built from the stones of the former Balvenie Castle. A lord had this castle built for one of his mistresses, whose ghost is said to still haunt the Balvenie. The thick stone walls, which provide good insulation in both summer and winter, are ideal for today's youth. The maltmaster David Stewart began in the 1980s with cask finishes, which were still unusual at that time. One famous example is one we're going to try tonight, the 14-year-old Balvenie Caribbean cask, which was finished in a rum cask. So what sort of whiskey does Balvenie produce? Well, the distillery character of the Balvenie with sweet honey and vanilla notes is typical of a Speyside distillery. It's known for cask finishes, which maltmaster David C. Stewart was one of the first to start in the early 80s. The core range is very large, with the 12-year-old Doublewood, the first one we'll try tonight, with a sherry cask finish being the flagship. It then goes on up to the 30-year-old. These whiskies get even better when the sweet and smooth tones are complemented by oak and darker flavours such as leather and cigars. And another whiskey in the core range is the Balvenie Caribbean cask 14-year-old. While the rum casks used to be sourced directly from the Caribbean, the distillery now takes a different approach, as the casks were often too dry. The rum itself is now imported to Dufftown and blended on site to achieve the desired flavour profile. The distillery then fills this rum into American oak barrels before the 14-year-old Balvenie is placed in these barrels for finishing. Once a year during peak week, the Balvenie distills a batch of smoky whiskey. Distillery manager Ian Miller came up with this idea during a visit to Islay. The resulting whiskies belonging to the Balvenie Stories series. The peat used, which is sweeter than that from Islay, comes from Speyside. There did used to be a few independent bottlings of Balvenie. As a result, there are only now a handful of bottles in the market that contain whiskey straight from the cask. In recent years, the blended whiskey Monkey Shoulder has been developed, which consists partly of Balvenie whiskey. It serves as the sweet spice in the blend. You do get some independent bottlings called Burnside, I think, and that's a teaspoon Balvenie. It's a teaspoon usually of Kenengvi, sister distillery, added to so that they cannot market it as Balvenie, and it has to be then called a blended malt, I think. So first up tonight, we've got the Balvenie Doublewood, which is not much of a surprise. It's aged in two kinds of oak casks. It was firstly matured in refill American oak casks before it was treated to a finish in first fill European oak Oloroso sherry butts for an additional 9 months. It was launched in 1993 and it's become a somewhat iconic whiskey over the years. Even at 12 years old, it's rich and complex and can be thought of as an example of what Balvenie distillery crafts. So here we are, the Balvenie Doublewood 12-year-old at 40%. I think it's chill filtered almost certainly, and I think possibly a little colour added to this. There are a little bit of tears, but it's not thick, viscousy tears. They're quite thin tears. So on the nose, it's quite gristy. Um, there's a supple nuttiness intertwined with spices. Honeyed sultanas and grapes. It's quite inviting. It's distinctly, but not fully sherried, this one. Get some fresh stone fruits, plums, fresh fig, and red cherries. And you do get some kiwi and gooseberry notes, which might be derived from the ex-bourbon cask. It's a light butterscotch, honey and floral like honeysuckle. Overall, it's quite light, fruity, pleasant, and summery. It's sweet with apples, honey, oak, dried fruits. There's some Christmas cake in there, spices, apple peel, vanilla, a bit of furniture varnish, and caramel notes. It's quite elegant. We'll try them out. It's sweet with a good body, and the bourbon characters develop a gentle spice with a little vanilla, and there's a hint of slight smokiness lurking quietly in the substrate. some dried fruit too, combined with nuts, nutmeg, cinnamon, and then it goes back into the bourbon notes. Very well integrated. It's a silky but not syrupy body with a mid-tongue burn. And then more butterscotch, an oaky vanilla, and a layer of cream cracker and shortbread, but not so much fruit. Sweet and dry with dried apples, light honey, oak, and spicy notes. And the finish is spicy, slightly drying, still quite sweet. It's a medium length finish. And there's a touch of smoke that's slightly from the toasting of the barrel, but only a low level of charcoal bitterness. Marshmallow and dried coconut linger. I'm going to try, I think, 4 drops of water in this. I don't think we'll get any Scotch mist here. No, I don't think so. Water wakes up a bit of licorice and almond extract. It dampens the fruit. It's still sweet. Icing sugar, hints of pine tree sap, confectionery, and maybe a little hint of an overripe fruit basket. We'll try them out. Well, unsurprisingly, it's thinner. I don't think this needs water. It wouldn't hurt to try a little bit, not too much. With water, it's less sweet, clearer. Uh, Citrus in the development overclasses the spicy freshness. And the finish is sweet, spicy, and dry with apples and vanilla notes. It's medium fresh, sweet, and there's a sort of light bitter oak there. So, Balvenie Doublewood. Well, I've tasted it a few times, and it is a classic. And it's always a pleasure to revisit. And it's probably a single malt with the ability to try on a non-whiskey drinker, to try and convince them of the deliciousness of whiskey. It's the quintessential mid-level single malt. It's got an array of pleasant but not overbearing flavour and some aroma notes, mostly fruit in the nose and baked goods on the palate, with no off notes, and mercifully little bitterness on the finish. It's just everything you want it to be, and it is still probably the archetypal single pour malt to introduce a newcomer to whiskey. I'm going to cleanse my palate now. So that was with a Stockings mini oatcake. So now we're moving on to the Balvenie 14-year-old Caribbean cask. So it was initially aged in a traditional oak cask before it was finished in cask, which previously held Caribbean rum to try and impart some extra sweetness and warmth to the whiskey. In fact, to create it, Balvenie maltmaster David Stewart made his very own blend of West Indian rums, filled it into casks, and then eventually replaced the rum in said casks with Balvenie whiskey. So it's pretty much the same colour as a 12-year-old. It's chill filtered and probably coloured. And again, it has quite thin tears. Let's see what we've got on the nose. And it's very rich with notes of tropical fruits, passion fruit, and creamy toffee, vanilla, oak, and a very light smokiness. And on top of that, there's some subtle but distinct notes of pineapple. It's almost like picking up a whole fresh pineapple and smelling it before cutting into it. And you can pick up a very light alcohol burn in the nose. It's at 43%. Let's see what the mouth's like. It's actually slightly thicker tears on this one. Sweet vanilla forms a creamy palate with notes of apples and mangoes with a hint of orange in the background. Vanilla, sweet oak, and fruitiness. There's some very light smokiness, but the vanilla and rum notes make it very subdued. The finish lingers with a vanilla focused character. It's a long and a pleasant finish, and it cranks up the whiskey experience to a completely different level. It's making the Balvenie Caribbean cask drink like a bigger, more potent scotch. And in addition, it moves the mouth activity to the front and sides of the tongue and keeps it there before gradually fading out. The whole experience is one that is rich and creamy and satisfying. And the finish is driven by a smooth and soft vanilla flavour. I'm going to try 4 drops of water in this. Not really any Scotch mist there. And now I'm getting red, ripe red and green grapes. Mango. And the rum comes through a touch. But also you get sort of port and caramel in the mix as well. And with water, it's quite chewy with tropical fruits, passion fruit, and mango, with a little peach, sugar cane, molasses from some citrus in a sort of way. And it's also laced with golden honey. And the finish is peppery with ripe peaches and a sort of sugary dark rum. It's a short finish, but it's a nice finish. So this is quite mouth coating and fruity with a superb balance. And it's a great whiskey with some amazing flavours. But it has one quality that really stands out, and that's its uniqueness. These whiskies that are finished in casks such as rum, wine, and port can be a hit and miss. But this one really does work. It adds a fruity and sugarcane type quality to this drink that really lives up to its name of Caribbean Cask. If you're looking for something a little different in a Scotch whisky, I like a bit of a fruit and or a rum, you've got to try this. So I think Balvenie produces great whisky, but then it waters it down to 40 to 43%, which takes away some of what I like best about higher strength whisky. That is experimenting with a little water to compare the various strengths. But as my brother is such a Balvenie connoisseur, and I've been fortunate to taste many of their more exotic limited releases, which can indeed be special, I'd say the 12-year-old is a great dram to introduce novice whisky drinkers to our taste. The 14-year-old Caribbean Cask is a great rum cask finished whisky, if that's what appeals to you. Thanks for listening.